Hello, and welcome to the Kingdom Come podcast, a OPCC original. I'm Tyler Savatinaya, and happy to have you with us here today. If you've listened to any of our other episodes, welcome back. And if this is your first time, thank you for joining us. We are here to create a community that is growing and moving towards the plan of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And if you feel called today at any time to reach out to somebody for questions, or you have questions, or you're seeking that companionship, you can email Grant Ford. It's grant@opcc.com, I believe. And we'll be happy to get connected to you. But today we are joined by two members of Overland Park Community Church here, Faith and Ellison. Faith is the daughter of our pastor, Jimmy Holbrook, and Ellison is somebody who's been coming to church for a while and friend of Faith. And I'm so happy to have you guys here today.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Excited.
Now, Ellison, you are still in high school, 1 year left to go, and Faith is heading out here very shortly to go to college. I won't say where to on the internet here, but that's very exciting. Faith, what was it like to be done with school? It's been a while for me, but that's like a big thing.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, honestly. Like I just ended and we had a week left before everyone else got out of school, and we were kind of like, what should I do? It's just kind of like, it didn't really feel like anything had changed that much. But now as I'm getting closer to leaving, I'm starting to feel it a little bit more.
There's just that little knot in your stomach that keeps getting a little tighter every day. You're like, okay, what's this going to be like? And it won't change. Until you get about 2 weeks in at college, then it kind of starts to lift itself as you get comfortable.
Okay, good to know.
And with a year left, Ellison, are you getting senioritis at all? Are we ready to be done?
I could say I'm ready to be done. It feels like if I didn't have to go back, it wouldn't feel weird. But also I'm looking forward to new opportunities, new friendships, because a lot of my friends were seniors. So I don't know. I'm excited for, as much as I'll miss them, I'm excited for a year to figure things out on my own and continue what we've kind of started with ministries at our school.
Yeah, oh, wow. So you guys, I come from a small school myself, from Atchison, Kansas, 11,000 people. I graduated with 120 kids. So I'm sure you guys have way larger classes. And I'm assuming you were both involved in your ministry portion in school. What is that like? I don't know anything about what that would be like.
Well, after COVID, so my freshman year, we did have a group. It was Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so I would go to that. We'd meet once a week. But then after COVID happened and we came back to school, there was everyone who led it had already graduated and they weren't there anymore. And so I felt like the Lord was really urging me to kind of restart the group, and come back with a different name so that people wouldn't feel like it was only open to athletes and that anyone could go. And then that's actually where I met Ellison last year, 2 years
Sophomore year, yeah.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Because we were both trying to start the club at the same time, but we had never met or heard about each other. And so our assistant principal kind of got us connected.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep.
And what do you guys do in this with your ministry there? Is it just, I'm aware, and probably most people are aware of what Fellowship of Christian Athletes is, but what are some of the things that you guys would do in this group?
We brought in some speakers a couple of times. We offer events. Some of them are just fellowship events where it's hey, we're going to go hang out. And then some of it's I don't know, we attend speaker type, I don't know, events that are local and have an emphasis on prayer in schools. And then we pray together, play games, eat breakfast, all those things.
Yeah, we'd have a weekly meeting. And so we'd all get together and just, we'd eat a little breakfast, whether it was a Pop-Tart or a donut or something, and then we'd play a short game. And then after that, we'd usually move into reading the word together, prayer together, or sometimes we even had opportunities to teach them the discipleship tools that we were learning here. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
That's one of the harder things to do. The shapes and the tools that we have here is one of the hardest things to do is learn those, but then also to teach those at a young age. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So Faith, you said with the COVID and kind of lost everyone that was there, you were called to a leadership position to be able to take that over. What was that like? What did you hear from the Lord in knowing that this was something that you wanted to do and then taking the affirmative action for it?
Yeah, so I just remember being like with some of my friends, I think there were like 3 other people. Yeah, 3 other people. And I came to them and I was like, hey, I need you guys like to help me do this. I was sitting in my word time and talking to the Lord about how I'm frustrated that there's not really Christian community at my high school other than like my really close friends, like no one I can really reach out and talk to. And the Lord was like, well, there are people there. You just aren't able to find them because you don't have a place to meet and like a community. And I remember my freshman year thinking like the group that was there like it didn't really feel like it could be the best that it could be, you know? Like it felt like something was missing or maybe the students leading it weren't like 100% in. And so I felt like the Lord was finally like, you know, you've been like in a place where you're pretty strong in your faith for a while, so you need to step up and try and find those kids at your school instead of trying to be scared and not willing to talk to other people. So
what was it like wrestling with internal anxiousness through that? I mean, everybody's got some sort of anxiety when it comes to that, but this can be like a big deal in most areas, especially in our climate today. What were some of the things that you had to wrestle with internally?
Well, I remember telling myself like, well, first of all, you're not really allowed to talk about your religion at public school. And so I kept telling the Lord, like, well, I'm not going to be able to find a sponsor, like, because you have to have a teacher that leads the club in order to have a club at school. And so I was like, I'm not really going to be able to find a sponsor. And I'm just like, where are we going to meet? How is this going to work out? What if people like tell me I'm not allowed to do this, even though it used to exist and all those things. But it just came down to trusting the Lord and it all worked out. So.
That's really cool. That actually reminds me of I'm currently in the middle of reading Exodus and Moses going to the burning bush and hearing from the Lord on like what you're supposed to hear, the things that I'm commanding you to do, and go and speak to Pharaoh and say these words. And then Moses saying, I don't know how to, I can't do that. I don't know how to speak. And the Lord going, like, I'm telling you and going to tell you what you're going to do in that situation. Just let me take over and have control of your life there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Ellison, so now with a year left, are you going to be taking over that leadership role?
Yeah, I'll be continuing it for another year. And then we're going to we have 2 other leaders who go to our school who are also going to be seniors with me. And we're probably looking to add a few more leaders by the end of that first semester once we get to know people and really get them involved. So.
And what does, passing the torch along, what does this kind of look like for you in a leadership role? And what does the group kind of look like it's moving towards?
I think that the group's kind of like, it's definitely moving toward, we have a big divide in ages, I think. We have some like underclassmen who are like pretty constant, and then we have people who are in my grade who are pretty constant. So I think next year is going to be a lot about really getting the word out about us and really like making that like a community, not just like a once a week attended thing. You know, like we've learned so much in our D group about like fellowship and like actually walking through life with each other. And I think that's where I'm hoping to head with it next, because right now it's just kind of a thing on our calendar. So
fair enough. We'll put a pause on that because that's where we are right now. But I'd like to go back a little bit further and just see kind of like how this all started, because obviously, Faith, you've been the preacher's daughter and kind of grown up with that dynamic that obviously most people don't get to grow up with and be led through. And that can be difficult for a lot of people. What was the home life like being a child of a pastor?
Yeah, so I feel like my dad kind of did it differently than like how it shows in the movies, you know, like the super strict dad where you don't get to do anything or hang out with your friends and all that stuff. I just remember from a very young age, he always was like he was sure that his actions were following like what the Lord was doing. And so that way, just by watching him and watching my mom, even I was like, I started to kind of want and desire that myself. And he would always like, he doesn't really like, he gives me freedom to make my own choices. So that way it wasn't like he was forcing me to have a faith. I got to decide to have my own faith as I continued to get older. So.
And you've got quite a few siblings. Does I guess you saying you have your own faith, how does it differ or look different inside that large family dynamic?
Yeah. I would say that I really got to step up and lead my younger sisters quite a bit, especially in the past couple of years. And just like, we even get to learn from each other, even though they're younger than me. They'll like, I just remember nights in my room where they come in and we're just talking about different things that are happening at school or with our grades and how we can use the Lord to like have almost peace with it and things like that. And same with, I feel like we just all have like a close relationship to the Lord. And then that allows us to have close relationships with each other instead of having to fight all the time and be mad at each other. So
the normal sibling stuff.
Yeah.
That's still there though, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool.
Mhm.
And Ellison, I don't know if you have any siblings or, but kind of a different path. How did that work out in your family, and kind of like how you ended up where you are today? Not being, it almost seems like it would be expected of faith with being in that family dynamic to that this is the path you're going to follow.
Mhm.
What did that look like for you growing up?
For me, we went to church. It was, the Sunday school thing. My parents got divorced and there was like a huge divide in like what my parents were believing and the example that was setting before me. So it really kind of, I think my faith started growing when I started to see the difference between my parents' actions based off of how faithful they were to God. And like, especially with my mom, like she was someone who I was looking to, even through like her struggle with her divorce and being a single parent all of a sudden, her faith was very strong. And it was something that I was aware of myself. Like I was also longing for it. And it like, even if in the moment I wasn't aware of it, I look back on those moments and like those, I don't know, I think those pushed me kind of into a place where I was really searching for God. With my younger siblings, I have 3 younger siblings, so it's kind of become like a kind of leadership type deal. They ask a lot of questions, and I don't know, I've noticed them like really asking how to like replicate the same things. So it's been really exciting to kind of do what my mom did for me, but for them, kind of be that person that I'm setting an example for. But yeah, I don't know. I think that with our club at school, actually, that was like kind of out of a place of like, I was kind of finding school insufferable because I did not have any close friends that were Christian. And it was something I had experienced before COVID, was like a community and a youth group. And when COVID like ended, I went back and it was just not there. So, a lot of like, I don't know, my call to ministry was kind of just like that step of faithfulness. And also that like, I was honestly kind of bothered that I didn't have that community that I was longing for and that, everything I was reading was saying I was supposed to have. So that's kind of the rundown.
That's interesting. So how do you, I think a lot of people, younger people, your guys' age, might probably feel that way, that they're alone in this and they come from either large or small schools where that just, it is not a common thing to have these Christian groups that, people feel welcome to. Everybody kind of feels alone. How do you battle through that spiritual warfare to get to the other side and even make that for yourself?
I think that when I was younger, it kind of came from a place of routine, and I don't think it was like a deeper relationship, But I think that probably around when I was like 14, I was really becoming more aware to like what God's, not necessarily, I don't know if at the time I would have said that I knew what God's plan was for me, but I think that when the doors were opening, I was like walking through them and I was praying through them, and everything that I was reading in my word time was, pointing towards those things. So it was that repetition of, I don't know, that like that, I don't know, like, what do you call that? Like guidance from God to continue walking out that, even with spiritual warfare and even with the doubts. So.
And so at a young age, both of you are clearly very attuned. Before today, even many years ago, are clearly very attuned to being able to hear, listen, and follow the guidance from the Lord. And I think that's really neat. That's not something that a lot of people have, even just to their own parents. You know, how does that happen? What does that look like? Because again, I mean, I remember being a kid not listening to my mom in her voice, let alone the voice of the Lord at that young of an age. What can you attribute to that, and what did that look like for you? How did you know that was the right voice to listen to and to pursue it?
I feel like for me, it was kind of like once you finally listen to what the Lord's calling you to do and you see him like work through it and you see the reward at the end, it just becomes so fun and exciting. Like even for Ellison and I, like part of her story about like longing for community, when she finally walked in obedience to start the club, that's when we became friends. And like we became each other's community at school and in our choir class. And we didn't realize how much we had in common until we both stepped in obedience with the Lord. And then from there, she found the church and our youth group and all those things. So it's kind of just like whenever you walk in that obedience, seeing like the fruit that comes from it.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it feels right. Like there's no, I don't know, like as you walk it out, there's like kind of what I mentioned about like the doors like being open. Like there was nothing that was an obvious obstacle that was like making me rethink what I was doing. Even like I think despite like personal anxieties and fears about walking more in faithfulness, I think that the overall like overarching like theme of everything I was doing was still, I don't know, like joyful, and it was like still like producing fruit. So.
What does that fruit look like? I cheesy question, softball, but it's a difficult dynamic. It'll probably be the theme of this show, but at that age and the stage that our country is in the constant battles that we're seeing, especially the attack on the education system and children, what kind of battles and warfare do you guys see at your school daily, and how do you reach those people whether they want it or not?
I feel like, I mean, even just like in the classroom, whenever the like teachers are talking and they say something that you're like, ooh, like that's just uncool. Like, how can you speak on behalf of everyone and teach that to people, you know? And there have been times where I've just raised my hand in class and been like, well, actually, I don't agree with that. And I've had to share my opinion, obviously without saying like, this is what God tells us, but definitely stuff centered around identity. I feel like our ELA classes are shifted from like literature and reading and English language arts to more about like culture and the world's opinion on things. And so that's definitely been like a battle. And I feel like just like in small group discussions, like being able to share my own opinions with others has definitely opened doors with my classmates. And they're like, I mean, they're not always like, yeah, like I agree with you, but I think that they notice that something's different in me and that I have fun, you know, at school and doing my schoolwork and stuff like that, even if I'm not necessarily agreeing with what the teacher's saying. So,
and I think even with like answering to teachers and to like classmates who are kind of share like opposing beliefs that, I mean, sometimes are really kind of shoved down people's throat. I mean, truthfully, like it's just kind of the expectation. Yeah. I think that like, I think in discussions, it's been really interesting to kind of share like my testimony, and not necessarily like, oh, like my salvation moment, but just like why I like might disagree with something because in my experience, this has been, you know, I don't know, this has worked out in my life. And I don't know, I think that does separate us from some of our peers, and they do ask questions and they at least notice a difference or like assume that, I don't know, I think that they assume that we have it figured out and that we don't want to talk to them, you know? But I think that it's also, like, but also like those are the moments where even if they don't really want to listen, they kind of, it's kind of our soapbox for a few minutes to like kind of share our experience. So I don't know, leaning on that testimony thing has been helpful rather than just, Bible thumping, because it doesn't always go over well. And then they usually come with questions, or if they like, sometimes they refute it and they argue with it, but sometimes you can like, slide a little piece of the word in. So
how does the staff take it? The teaching staff well, again, I mean, you are correct, and it's been this way for a while, and I don't think it'll ever change. But not teaching curriculum fully and giving their own opinion, and it's their soapbox, so they kind of get to do what they want to do. But how does the adult staff take kind of some of your pushback?
I feel like for me personally, I remember this past year in my ELA class, whenever I was talking to my teacher, he made a comment about how this Christian football player or something made his religion like his whole life, and then it ended up not working out for him. And I kind of raised my hand and I was like, well, actually, if you put like your life in something else, it's also like it's going to fall apart, and you're just going to end up on the floor crying, asking what happened. So I feel like you have to put your life in something of a higher power. And my teacher was kind of like, yeah, like, I agree with you. And then he's kind of like, next question. So I don't know. Sometimes it usually just moves on the conversation and changes it to something else. Or I've never had a teacher try and fight back with me and tell me that my opinion wasn't true. So
same. I think that they maybe I think they definitely move the conversation along kind of quickly. I don't know if it's always intentional, but I think that, I don't know, it's definitely pushback from the enemy, taking those moments away to and moving the conversation on once it's been said. But I also think that there's something good to it in the sense of ending the topic that a lot of the time the teachers were leading that it's really not being led with any truth behind it. So I think usually it's kind of a finite end to that portion of the conversation, and hopefully usually moves on to something else that is a little bit better.
But I've also had I had this one teacher that it was a cool class where I had the same teacher all 4 years, and I knew that she didn't believe in God or anything like that, but I just continued to, be myself and stuff. And at the end of my senior year, she wrote me a letter and she told me that she admired my faith and my ability to still relate to people while still walking closely with the Lord. And I was just blown away. I was like, no way. She actually noticed it and appreciated it, even though she never reciprocated my feelings. So it was cool.
Yeah, it's kind of the same, goes back to kind of what you were saying earlier, is the same thing as you didn't believe that you could talk about your faith in school. And that translates into the real world when school's open or school's over and you get, an adult job. And that kind of is the way that society is pushing things. You don't speak about it, and you can kind of get away in certain aspects, but not in teaching as much. That the giving their opinion on political or world events is very open, but this other side, not so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guarantee your teacher was probably talking about Tim Tebow, which is an interesting story all on its own, because football falls apart, but the rest of his life picks up afterwards. So I think that's an interesting dynamic when somebody brings that up as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we've created this leadership segment that you kind of have to leave behind, faith in school, and you're getting some attunement from adults in the room to be able to see who you are. And now we've got to leave that behind. We've got to go to college and kind of start all over. Are you already aware of some programs or people to be around where you're going? And what does that kind of look like for you for the next 4 years?
Yeah, so I'm really excited because I'm actually going to a Christian university, and it's my first time actually being in a school where the professors are allowed to talk about the Lord, and they say that the whole point of the school is to prepare us for our future careers in like the eyes of the Lord, like how Jesus would prepare us. And so I'm really excited for that aspect, but also just different communities. I know our RAs like have to have Bible studies with us, and my grandma will be down there. And so I'll be able to go to her church, and she'll be able to minister to me even more than she already does now. And so I'm really excited for it. I know it's going to be good, but I'm also sad to leave the church behind. I feel like it's finally growing and picking up, and all these exciting things are happening, and I'm having to, move away. But
You Holbrooks have a way of growing everything that's around you wherever you go, though.
oh, thank you.
And any thoughts on the future for you, Ellison?
Like
still a year
college-wise,
left.
or-
I mean, still a year left, but have we thought about, is it college-wise or maybe even not school related, but what comes next for you in leadership? Obviously, you have this group that you're taking over in school, but you also talked about your discipleship group that you're both leading. I'd be interested to talk about that. But what else is there for you in a leadership role and following and staying attuned to what the Lord is saying?
I think like especially in our D group, I think it's going to be about maintaining what we've already started. And I think that a lot of the girls in our group really have always looked to Faith and Ellie, our other leader of the group. And, they've looked up to them in the youth group and, at school and all their relationships. They've looked to, Faith and Ellie. So I think that it's going to be about kind of like, I don't know, not having them discourage people who felt like they were relying on them. And I think, I don't know what that looks like yet. Like, I don't know what people's reactions are going to be, but I think at the very least, continuing what we've started and maintaining something that was being already fruitful is going to be really helpful through that. So.
Yeah.
And so we've got a discipleship group. This is one you were a part of. So do you have a group that you'll be that you're set up with when you go to college, or we're looking for that?
I'll definitely be looking for something, but I don't have anyone. Like, I know my roommate, she's from here too. And so we'll have each other, but I don't really know what it is after that. I do plan to still stay connected to our D group now. I feel like it's really going somewhere. It's been really cool to see the younger girls, younger than us, open up and talk about things that they're struggling with and being able to pour into them. And since I've been in the youth group since 5th grade, I feel like it's not something that I can let go of so easily. So I definitely still plan on texting in the chat every once in a while.
Oh, Faith Poppins in the chat. I like it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting dynamic, because the main one that we have here at the church, I mean, everybody has their discipleship groups with their own people, but it's generally people who are in adulthood. They're out of college, have jobs, families even. And there's not many, if maybe you're probably the only one, to have your own younger discipleship group. What is that like? It's a little bit different from school, because you don't get to in your school group. I'm assuming you probably don't get to dive as deep into these people's lives and just 100% minister and pour out into these people's cups. So what is that like in a different capacity at such a young age?
I think that one of the big differences is even just in the structure of our D group, especially when we were walking through Zume and all the training with Grant, a lot of the emphasis was on the more, I don't know, once you've been discipled, you kind of go and start your own thing. Logistically, that doesn't really work sometimes for us, because a lot of our girls can't drive yet, and we provide the space of where we meet, and we provide rides, that type of thing. So it's become not necessarily teaching them how to start a new D group, but teaching them how to disciple to their peers, to their friends, more personal one-on-one interactions. So I think the end goal with them, sometimes we have to change the emphasis.
Yeah, we're trying to encourage them more to invite their friends to our D group, and then whenever we break into the smaller groups, have them lead their friends in the small groups, so that way they're still getting a chance to lead. But it is really hard, especially when they have younger siblings and stuff, to like have them ask, their moms and dads if they can host 6 girls over at their house once a week. So yeah, so that's definitely been a little bit of a hurdle, but I feel like it hasn't really stopped anything.
I think that if anything, they've had to be bolder in spaces where, Jesus isn't always like the welcome topic. Like they've had to be bold in their relationships that don't have Jesus in it yet. So
what is that like with the parents? You mentioned it can be a little hard trying to drive people around or host people, sure, but have there been any instances where there's been pushback from parents, or where conversations have to be had, or any sort of difficulties in that department?
I don't think so. Not really on our part. I don't know if they've ever been like upset about it and told one of their girls something, but they've never come to us directly.
It's both working.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Have there been any dynamics of people in your group that don't come from a home that knows the Lord, and the child gets to pour into that a little bit?
I feel like there are some girls that kind of just started coming that are more from that dynamic. So I don't know how much they've like started to share with their family yet. But for the most part, most of us are from the youth group. So it's like, yeah, it's just like the girls that are from the youth group, and we like to meet at our D group, because at youth group, you don't really get that chance to like dive in deep, especially because it's like a big range of kids from like kids who are just there to eat the pizza and play the games, and then the kids who really want to get serious with the Lord. So,
and also like, I think we're a little more intentional, and like, since each person is making the decision to be there every week, like we're not, the youth group's really great for pulling kids in and like pulling kids from the community into something that, surface level is really, really fun, and then, goes a little deeper than what they might be expecting. But I think it's been really cool to have so many younger girls like continuously making the decision to, come back and to like want more. So that's been cool.
And you guys have been talking about, as we move forward, we hope to keep things continuing to be fruitful. What are some of the goals or strides? What are some of the goals that you have for this group? What are some of maybe the milestones that they've reached, and kind of hang on that whole little thing?
Well, before church camp, we were sitting at like, I think we had like 3 or 4 girls that came regularly. And then after we got back from church camp, we had like every girl that was at church camp wanted to join in. So now we're sitting more at like 10 to 13 girls. So we've really grown a lot. And we're starting to like let the girls that were there before church camp start to be like more of the leaders and step into that roles. And then since Ellie and I are leaving, Ellison's going to have my sister come up and help lead them.
So it's been exciting to have like a place, like it's been really great to have 2 people who are really strong in their faith start us off, and also like for the girls to be excited to like want to fill the roles that we'll be losing, and also I think that like, I don't know, I think that we haven't had really D group during the school year yet, and there's a lot of challenges that we face during the school year. So I think it's going to be really interesting and exciting to kind of work through school together, and to be able to minister to people at school through our youth group. I think that's going to be a change of topics, because in the summer it's kind of just like I don't know, I feel like usually it's easier to be routine in your faith when you have a lot more time.
Yeah, there's a lot less temptation too whenever you're just at home.
So I imagine we'll work through a lot more of that, but I'm also excited that we've been able to build a foundation before school gets started.
It's always the tough part when you start getting all the activities, and then you get the homework on top of it, and can be a real block to any progress. What kind of preparations, Ellison, are you making for that for the upcoming year, and expecting some of the blockades to happen?
Well, I think faith actually was a huge part of like me figuring out how to not let school be and like activities be something that's preventing my growth in my faith. I was nervous for like, the daunting like junior year, and she really led me through, how to make the most of your time, but also rely on the fact that like your like worth and your value and everything that is important in your life is, founded on Jesus like solely. So I think that sharing my experience in that, now that I've really walked through a whole year where I felt like, really in tune with what's God is calling me to. And like, I've felt, I don't know, like I was not as distracted as I had been in like previous school years. I think it's going to be I'll be intentional about emphasizing how to, walk that out too, because a lot of them, and we have like younger middle schoolers even, are like still in the routine, like getting into the routine of multiple classes. So I think we'll definitely make that part of our conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always told her it's better to just spend time with the Lord or go hang out with your friends as long as they're godly friends, and then come back to the homework, and it's always a lot easier.
It always gets done.
Even if you're not putting in your best effort on one assignment, you'll probably still get an A. So it's okay.
We worked through that.
Yep.
How do you teach through I don't know how I really want to word this, but teaching them to walk through the difficulties of maybe having the roadblocks of whether it's their parents or their peers, schoolwork. How does it's hard enough for an adult to do with a regular job and like going home and whether they have a partner or not, and throw in the peer pressure of what it's like to be your guys' age and how do you walk somebody through that?
I don't know. I feel like something that's really helpful is like how the 3/3 groups are set up, where you have to like say something you're going to do that week, and then next week you have to come back and say what you did. Because even if it's just like one small thing, like talking to someone, it like builds your confidence. And each time that a girl's confidence gets built a little bit higher, she's more willing to go out and tell people, because she realizes like, well, the Lord got me through this one. Like he's not gonna let me down if I am doing what he's asking me to do. So
yeah, on our end, it's a lot about like challenging them and like, making it known that they're going to be held accountable, so it's, I don't know, we put a lot of that, like the ball in their court when it comes to that. But also like we're praying for them, and we keep track of what they're needing prayer for. So I think that's been helpful too, like knowing that they have that to come back to, that there's a group of people that are, interested and are invested in them and in their issues and in their successes, all of those. So
that's interesting, because it is a good roadblock, and it maybe a thing to teach them through. I don't know. It's my favorite book. It's Nehemiah, and just how the whole situation worked with him is, he would spend 3 or 4 months in prayer before he asked or acted on anything.
Yeah.
And it always had the outcome of what the Lord wanted, which he was obviously attuned to. And so I think that could maybe be a good building block for those who have those sorts of struggles.
For sure.
As we kind of land this plane here, those are you're in a difficult situation, and I commend you a lot, because that I couldn't imagine doing that going through school. I wish I had those opportunities, but I'm glad to be where I am now, and that you guys have the ability and have been taught and been attuned in a great way to be able to follow the Lord. Do either of you have a verse or a message you'd like to leave the people with today?
I always go back to Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans not to harm you, but to prosper you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Because I feel like when you're young, you get scared a lot that something's not going to work out, or your friends aren't going to be there for you, or whenever you finally like walk in obedience and tell them how you actually feel about God, they're going to shun you and walk away from you. And just knowing like that the Lord's got you, and as long as you're following him, his plan is going to be awesome for your life, and you don't really have to fear the future. And you could just take it one day at a time.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah.
I have one. I mean, I at least have been trying to live by Proverbs. I think it's 3:5-6. It's trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. And I think it really has been, I don't know, like something I've been trying to pursue in my daily life, and it's been really successful. And it's something I'm trying to, also demonstrate to others, to really, I mean, it's what we were talking about with school, like really, my priorities are now like in Christ, and it's all working out because of it.
It's amazing. I know the Lord has amazing things coming up for you guys. I am excited to hear about both what you're, Allison, doing with the D group and your school group that you're stepping up in leadership. And I know, Faith, I'll be hearing plenty about what is going on at college, and I'm excited to see your growth as well. And I appreciate both of you coming on today. If you've taken anything from this today and you feel like you need to reach out to somebody or speak to someone, get connected with a community. I ask again that email Grant Ford, grant@opcc.com. Let him know what is on your heart and your mind, and see if we can't get you connected with a community around here. And just know that the Lord has a path for you. We'll see you next time. We are so thankful that you joined us, and have a blessed day.